Hey, Palm Boss fans, Bob Lusk here, out in the country outside of Texarkana, Arkansas, hanging out with a new friend, John Miller. Say hi, John.
How y'all doing?
Well, John has been working with Colton Sanders, the landowner, on this old Oxbow lake that they drained. And I thought it was so cool that let's just go live for a few minutes and we're going to drive around. But before we go, here we're in the side-by-side. I want to show you some features. Here's a peninsula right here. So this entire Oxbow Lake was really, really shallow. So when we had our first talks months ago, I told Colton, you know what, we got to get some shallow water down and get some depth. And so we talked about building peninsulas. So what I want you to see here is right here at the end of this peninsula, there's a shelf. And John, how deep is that shelf going to be underwater?
4 foot.
So it's going to be.
This one here is about 3 foot. We got them a little shallow water, and I haven't cut them to depth yet. We'll get up there on the skid steer, and I'll actually make kind of a trough there and lay blanket in it, put some pea gravel, some fine sand, make that brim bed on the end of each peninsula. Okay, so at the end of the peninsula, there's going to be a bluegill bed that's going to be Geotech cloth with 3/8 inch pea gravel. Where off in the distance, you can see that. We'll drive by that pea gravel in a minute, but this is such a cool project. I want everybody to see it. So we're going to go for a ride. Now over here, they piled up some brush and burned it, and they're going to leave that burned out brush right out here in the middle of the lake. Now, what's the deepest water out here, John? The deepest water in the deep side's about 10 foot.
So 10 feet's going to be the deepest, and our mission was to get as much water deeper than 3 feet as we could. So that
all the water inside the bottom is at least 4 foot deep.
So all the water in the basin of the lake is at least 4 feet deep. So right here is another cool peninsula. And what the peninsulas are for is to add shoreline and get rid of some dirt so they could get the depth. And if you look behind the peninsula, that's a 3-to-1 slope. Now, when they first started working on this, that was more like a 6 or 8-to-1 slope. So they've deepened it, shored it up. There's another spawning bed right next to this third peninsula on the side. So putting those spawning beds in different areas around the peninsula makes good sense because, heck, nobody out here, me included, none of you really know where the bluegills and red ear and sunfish are going to spawn. So as you can see as we're driving, they've created some coves and things. So stay with us. Don't go off yet because we got some really cool stuff down here because what John's done is he's started at the deep end so he can work his way into the shallow end. Now, one of the things to vary the bottom of the lake that he's done is he's created some channels. So there's a little narrow channel that they've been using to drive the trucks on, but he's built an underwater island right over there, and that's made out of clay. So you can see a couple of them. Right there's where the lodge is, and where a lot of the hub of activity is going to be for people. And so,
well, we're going to have a 70-foot boat dock that comes out. It'll come out 70 foot just to the boat dock, and then the boat dock itself, I think, is a 60 by 70 with a double slip. I'm going to cover the initial boat slip and then have a 15-foot uncovered area all the way around 3 sides of that dock. And this should be, those 2 underwater islands that I'm going to put brim beds on, should be within casting distance of the end of that.
All right, so then what he's figured out is that by bringing the dock out to a certain point, then he wanted to extend that by creating some habitat underwater so kids can catch brim and, you know, folks can come out at night and go fishing if they want to and be able to fish from the dock. So now what you're seeing here is you're seeing the beginning of some structure that they're creating that they're not quite through with. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. So there's what I call a tic-tac-toe board. And this is where they take, 8 to 10 inch diameter limbs and create these really cool little tic-tac-toe boards. Now that one, is this as tall as this one's going to be?
Pretty close because we're getting in shallower water.
Okay, so that one's going to be in fairly shallow water because, and they don't want it to come within about 3 feet of the surface if they can do that. If they can do that.
Well, the boss has got some kids, so we're probably going to do about 4 foot just to make sure if you fell off a jet ski that you wouldn't
be, for safety. So now let's turn right here just for a second. We were just talking about this. So here's a Bodark tree that they pulled up at the very upper end of this lake, and he's placed it right there. So this is when I talk about building an underwater community. So here's the peninsula, and you can see it's going to be in water maybe 8 or 9 feet deep. Then there's going to be the ledge where there's going to be a spawning bed, and actually people can wade out on it if they want to. And then this Bodark tree's laying here, and they're going to add more stuff to this, but one thing I suggested was cutting off those little bitty limbs. If they can cut off those small limbs and then bring them off to the side, they can stack those and make brush piles, and then they can have, habitat that is attractive to bait fish, and at the same time, they can have great big limbs that are attractive to bass, and they can actually fish in a whole lot easier. So they're going to modify that a little bit. Now, one of the things over here, we got into shallower water where there's sand, so they're going to leave all that open. Now, here's where it really starts getting fun. So you guys hang in there and watch this. You're going to love this. So they've taken some trees, and now on the back side, this is a levee that's right in the middle of this Oxbow Lake, right off the Red River. So they brought hackberry trees, other junk trees that needed to go, and they put them along this slope on this levee that cuts this Oxbow in half. On the other side of that levee is duck marsh. So now here's where it really gets fun. Now let's take a look right here. Look at the teepees they've built. So I'm a huge fan of teepees. So that's a great way to use limbs and pieces off of trees that otherwise would not be functional. So as we kind of pan around, you can start to see now right here is where they've got some outstanding habitat. So you can see some of the tic-tac-toe boards, you can see the teepees, you can see some brush piles. And when I talk about building an underwater community, here's exactly what I'm talking about. So here's what we've got. I want to show you all the elements because this is really cool. You can see in the background, there's another peninsula that's fairly shallow, and off the end of that peninsula, there's going to be gravel beds. Just adjacent to those gravel beds, you can see the brush. You can see the dense compaction stuff where little bitty bait fish like to hang out.
That peninsula there is actually 4 foot under the water.
So the peninsula there, that whole peninsula is under the surface of the water 4 feet. So now you can see these tic-tac-toe boards. What he's done here is he's anchored it with T-posts and wired these logs down so they can't float. He's done, let's see over here on these teepees, you can see in the middle there's one post that's been augered and buried in the ground. And then what did you do? Take barn nails and nail those to the top. And you can see every one of those sticks have been tapered to fit that post and nailed in. They're not going anywhere. So this is habitat at its best, guys. So I want you to see this. I want you to understand how it works. And they're not quite through with this lake. They're probably how much more you got to do?
Oh, that's just, this whole lake will be tic-tac-toes.
All right, so the mission is to cover about 30% of the lake basin with structure. You can see some of the sticks and the limbs and things staged over there. And let's just pause right up here just for a second when you get here. So we're going to wrap this thing up, and then we're going to save it so people can look at it. So, John, you're an angler.
I am. I'm a pond fisher. I've always I fished ponds over half my life, and now then you lake fish, but I love to pond fish.
Yep.
Everything after talking to Bob makes complete sense of how the fish habitat, what fish like. So I'm loving it.
It's pretty fun, isn't it?
It is.
And so now what he'll do is he'll come on around the lake, create more habitat, and then they can actually either pump water from the Red River, or they can pump water from a well, or they can wait on rain and get some water in here from the rain. So you know what? I thought this was so cool to take a few minutes to show it to you guys and just go live. Here's another cool feature. He's digging some trenches and then piling the dirt up, and that gives you some relief.
Underwater bed around the house.
All right. Hey, yeah, okay, we got one more thing to show you before we check out and go watch Friday Night Football here in a little bit. Watch those Gunner Tigers play Lone Oak tonight. So right up here by the cabin there's a ledge that was built right, and I'm pretty sure this was built for safety purposes. But right up here, we're going to go up a little hill right here. Right beside the lodge, there's this ridge that's about 2 feet underwater. So what John's doing now, he's taking a skid steer and he's pushing this dirt off to the side to create a trough. So tell everybody about that trough.
I'm gonna take that trough that's gonna be about 4 foot deep. We're gonna put Geotech fabric in it, and then the pea gravel will lay inside to the point it's 3 inches of gravel, and all the way around this lodge will be brim beds.
So people can walk out the back door after having a breakfast taco, and when the brim are on the beds, they can come out here and start casting and have some fun. So, hey, thanks for tuning in. I see a pretty good number of folks checking in. I appreciate that. But I thought it was pretty cool. And John, thanks to you, my friend.
Appreciate you.
Adios, everybody. I'll see you next time.